Okay, Representative Leavitt. Um, how did the BEAM Act come about, and what was your role in developing that?
Sure. Thank you, Jeremy, for having me and for asking that question. Sadly, the BEAM Act came about because of a tragic fatal crash of four in Renton, March 19th, 2024. Andrea Smith Hudson, Buster, Eloise, and Matilda were all killed by Mr. Jones, as well as two children of Andrea's. Rather, were sent to the hospital with serious injuries that are life-altering. And so that was the impetus of the bill. I started quickly, not too long after that, to start working on how do we address excessive speeding in Washington. That Washington has is not unique in the across the country, sadly, in terms of excessive speeding as a problem. But one third of the fatal crashes or injuries or damages across the state are caused by some form or element of excessive speeding. And Andrea grew up in my district, went to a high school in my district. Her family lives in my district. And so it was certainly a local connection to the 28th, which is where I'm fortunate to get to represent. And so that was the impetus, but I've been working on it for about a year now. Because like I said, got to work pretty quickly right after that fatal day.
Right. And I know it was just such a shocking crash, 112 miles an hour going through a red light and killing four completely innocent people who had no idea what was coming. Um, how did you come up with the idea, or where did that idea come from, to look at giving courts the option to put speed limiting devices on cars?
Sure. So once I started doing the research and I had reached out to our chair of public safety, our chair of the transportation committee in the House, and said, this is what I want to work on for the interim. I had learned through those conversations about intelligence assistance devices and started researching that. Also, the Washington State Traffic Safety Commission has been recommending, this has been on their list of things to do for a couple of years now. And through that research and work, learned about ISAs and how they were a great tool for courts, not only in Washington State, but certainly across the country. And the data bears out that they are effective tool to stop speeding.
How do these devices operate?
So they're installed on a car. They're installed by a vendor on a car, and there's a thing. I don't know what for lack of that's a lack of a technical term.
Yeah.
But there's a thing that's installed in the car, and so it's based on GPS technology and think hyper GPS technology. It's not something
Mhm.
simple that you or I might own, and I don't own a lot of technology, but it's not something that I certainly would own. But it navigates and it knows the geography in which it's in. And so if you're driving in a neighborhood, say 25 miles per hour, it can detect what that miles per hour zone is. If you're driving in maybe a faster residential area, might be 35 to 45. On the freeway, certainly 55 and above. And so it knows the geographic area in which you're in. And it quickly adapts and adjusts within seconds of navigating through those areas. And so what it does is it stops people from speeding. It's set at a maybe 10 miles per hour or over. And once you get near that 10 miles per hour, so if I'm going 25 and I'm nearing 33, 34, getting close to that 35, it's going to slow me down and not allow me to speed.
Wow. Well, and this is similar to like an interlock device for DUI drivers where they have to blow into the device before they get behind the wheel if they have sufficient DUIs or if a court weighs that. So, certainly not something that's unprecedented in the world of options that we give the court. It seems to me, and I think people who drive on roads in Washington will say, we have just gotten used to seeing people blow by us at extreme speeds. What did you uncover in terms of the speeding problem here in Washington State?
Well, over from 2019 to 2024, the increase of tickets issued going 50 miles per hour or more was increased by 200%. And that's significant. It's a huge, huge problem. And you mentioned the ignition interlock program, and this bill is patterned precisely after that successful program. But for speeding, it's a very similar concept. The penalties are very similar, and the pattern and frequency of which one is imposed is very similar. And so, but 75% of those who are driving on the roads have suspended licenses are driving anyway. And so this is a tool that is effective for law enforcement, for our courts to really stop these excessive, disproportionate folks who are causing the bulk of the harm on our roads.
Yeah. Well, and along that note, I mean, we look at Chase Jones' background. I remember after the crash, I started looking into who he was and got the body camera videos from his prior crashes. And it really stuck out to me because I remember sort of having this moment as I was watching these videos and I go, my God, they told this guy to slow down. There were warning signs before this crash that killed Andrea and the children. It's like there were many warning signs beforehand that this guy had a speeding problem. And what stuck out to me in court when I was in the room hearing the statement that was read when he was sentenced is he said that he was addicted to speed. I mean, this seems like even a broader issue of like, we've got to talk about this issue, get it to the forefront, and really emphasize the stakes are high here when it comes to speeders.
Yeah, absolutely. We lost 251 folks in Washington State from fatal crashes in 2023. Over 850 were either died or injured, and Mr. Jones is not the exception, sadly. And I too heard his statement sitting in that courtroom on that day, and he should have been stopped a couple times prior to that when he had those high-speed tickets, and I'm still unclear why those weren't on his record and why that wasn't the case. But nevertheless, it's a huge issue in Washington State. Again, we're not unique, it's across the nation, but Washington State has an opportunity to be a leader in the West Coast. And I'm hoping that through this bill and through this technology and this tool that we're going to give our courts and our law enforcement, that we will become that leader that we were with the successful ignition interlock program.
Well, and hopefully the end result here is that lives end up being saved and we can prevent a situation like what happened there in that crash. And hopefully we never see something like that again.
I
Well,
sure hope
Representative
not.
Leavitt, thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to add or think that our viewers should know?
Yeah, I just think it's really important. You mentioned education, and I think you're exactly right. We need to educate the public, not only the harm and dangers of excessive speeding, even going 10 or 15 miles per hour over can really cause significant harm to someone. But the dangers on the road are real, and we need to educate the public about what happens when you're going that fast, but then also to teach them about this tool. And so I'll be, once the bill is implemented or passed, we'll be working with the court associations and prosecutors associations and traffic safety groups across the state to make sure that we're educating about this tool and the option that exists and to make sure that we're utilizing it in every place to save lives.
Excellent. Well, Representative Leavitt, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.